Welcome back, everyone, to An Ordinary Search for Truth. My name is Nate, and today we'll be taking a surface look at worldviews, what they are, and what role they play in our lives. First, we have to ask, what is a worldview? A good follow-up question is, why should I care? And before I started researching this, I thought that worldviews were simply our opinions on things such as politics, world events, football teams, religion, things like that. And if it was as surface level as that, I probably wouldn't be too interested in talking about it on my channel. However, as I did my investigation, I discovered that worldviews go a whole lot deeper than that. I discovered that the majority of our worldview is in most cases not consciously chosen by us, at least not in the beginning, and is often passed down to us like a set of hand me down clothes. Your worldview is the foundation upon which you base everything that you do and everything that you think every single day of your entire life. And making sure that that foundation is built upon what is stable and true and genuine is my goal for this channel. So without further ado, let's get into it. When I research any topic, I always start from a linguistic point of view because it helps to know what the words themselves are trying to convey. And so in this case, I needed to find a definition for worldview. The problem is, not all sources agree on word definitions. So I typically go to three different sources to try and get a comprehensive understanding of what the meaning of these words that I'm looking up could be. I typically use what's called Lexico, which is a collaboration of Oxford University Press and dictionary.com. When you type anything into Google, that's the first result that will come up as far as giving you a definition. The second that I use is Merriam-Webster online, and I also use Wikipedia. I know what you're thinking, Wikipedia is not a reliable source, and it isn't all the time. But the reason why I use Wikipedia is because it often gives a very comprehensive view on whatever topic it is that I'm researching. In addition to that, it does often provide a lot of really great sources that I typically use later on in my investigation. That's why I use Wikipedia, and I always cross-reference it so I'm not ever going off of Wikipedia alone. Wikipedia's quoted source stated that a worldview is the fundamental cognitive orientation of an individual or society. Now, I wanted to understand what cognitive was meaning as it was used here. So I looked up its definition in all three sources as well. And cognitive was collectively defined as the brain's functioning or processing of experience in a broad sense. Merriam-Webster used comprehensive conception to describe one's view on the world, and Lexico also used the word conception in its definition. So again, I wanted to find what conception meant here, so I looked it up in all three sources as well. And I found that it was relating to the conceptual processes of the mind, such as abstract ideas, general notions, thoughts, beliefs, and imagination. After examining all these definitions of worldview and defining words within those definitions, I was able to put together my own definition for worldview. I wrote, "Your worldview contains the entirety of your intellectual knowledge, foundational beliefs, personal ideas, conscious conceptual and subconscious mental processing regarding everything that you sense, perceive, and experience. In short, how your mind processes everything that you experience." It was hard for me to distinguish in my research the difference between worldview and cognition, as in most cases they were largely synonymous. However, for the most part, it seemed that worldview was contained within the framework of cognitive ability. For example, we as humans, being able to use our cognitive abilities to think conceptually, have worldviews, whereas animals may not have the cognitive ability to think conceptually, most likely do not possess worldviews. And so worldviews are typically limited to just human cognition. This led me to wonder how many of us can actually say that we consciously choose everything that we think every second of every day. I definitely can't. And if our personal worldview is our unique conceptual processing of our experience, then how much of our worldview have we consciously chosen? Much of our thought and behavior is subconscious, habitual, hardwired, and as a result, so is much of our worldview. Our goal and our challenge is to consciously examine those fundamental aspects of our worldview and make sure that we are processing reality in an accurate or at least healthy way, which in my experience can greatly increase our quality of life. If we find that those foundational aspects of our worldview are not as strong as we thought they were, then we must take responsibility for our worldview and actively restructure it so that it can reflect who we genuinely want to be. We'll be starting this self examination in a deeper look. But a good question to ask before we do that is, how do worldviews develop, or how did my worldview come to be what it is today? As I said before, our worldview and cognitive development are largely synonymous. And since not a whole lot of research has been done regarding worldviews, I decided to dive into its practical equivalent, cognitive development, on which much research and theorizing has been done. On verywellmind.com, I found a list of, quote, 7 most well-known theories of cognitive development, end quote. I remembered learning about all of these in my high school psychology class, as well as a child development class that I took in college. You've probably heard of a few of them yourself. I'll list a few. We've got Freud's psychosexual development theory, Erikson's psychosocial development theory, Piaget's cognitive development theory, Bandura's social learning theory, etc. Each theory provides a specific view on cognitive development starting from birth, but none of them are a truly comprehensive model. Each theory likely plays a part in cognitive development and the formation of our worldviews, but it's hard to know what factor or factors affect our cognitive development and worldview formation the most. Is it genetics, culture, family dynamics, social interaction, behavioral conditioning? How can we know what extent each one plays a part in our lives? From what I found, because cognitive development is so complex, and because all factors do affect our development in some way, these factors definitely vary in their influence depending on the person and depending on the environment. We can generalize human cognitive development to a point, but at the end of the day, the way that our worldviews develop are as unique and diverse as we are. The biggest takeaways that I got from my research into cognitive development is that it begins very early in life, typically at birth, and is we are greatly affected by various factors that are external and beyond our control, but also that our cognitive development and worldview develop and change in response to experiences that we have in life. Depending on how identified we are with our worldview or specific aspects of our worldview, will determine how resistant those aspects are to change. When I say identified, I mean what we base our sense of self or who we are on. For example, it's a difference between saying, my political views most closely follow that of the Republican Party, or saying, I am Republican. Depending on how strong aspects of our worldview are, or how strongly we identify with them, when we're presented with new information or new experiences, we basically have 3 options. We can either reject it completely as being false and having no place within our view of reality. thus leaving our worldview largely unchanged. Or we can attempt to assimilate it by means of maybe a little bit of mental gymnastics in order to fit it in to our worldview whilst keeping the majority of our worldview largely unchanged. Or the last option we have is to assimilate the information or experience completely, irregardless of the effects that it may have on all of the other aspects of our worldview. If we can agree that the majority of us prefer comfort to discomfort, then we can logically assume that we default to the most comfortable option, which in this case is usually to reject new information or experiences completely, especially if they challenge our worldviews. We like to feel balanced as human beings, and we like our worldviews to remain so as well. Any change to an aspect of our worldview, depending on how foundational it is, will cause a ripple effect throughout the entire way that you view the world. And this often leads to feelings of discomfort, both mental and emotional. So typically, people don't want to feel that. And so they will do whatever they can to not allow those ripples to take place. Not much research has been done in regards to worldview equilibrium, or the tendency of our worldviews to like to stay the same. And so in this case, what we have to do is refer to our own life. So I've got a few questions that I'll ask that you can think about. Can you pick out pieces of who you are now that are the way they are because of where you grew up, how you grew up, who raised you, who you were raised with, what friends you had, where you went to school or church, or the absence of any of these things? Do you have any interests or hobbies, habits, or preferences, any aspects of your life really, that you inherited while growing up? Can you think of any of these things that used to be a part of your worldview that perhaps have changed or may have not changed as a result of your life experience? Is there any part or parts of your worldview that you find yourself defending in the face of information or experiences that challenge it? Are there newer aspects of your worldview that you have assimilated, even if it required other aspects of your worldview to change or be removed entirely? We'll be doing a lot more of this type of personal investigation in a deeper look. So, to summarize, we've simplified and personalized a definition of worldview to be how your mind processes everything that you experience. We've looked at the correlation between worldviews and our cognitive development and seen how external factors greatly influence our cognitive development while growing up, and also external factors greatly affect our worldview development. We've also discussed how our desire for comfort and stability can affect how our worldviews and how we react to new information and new experiences, where we can either reject, somewhat assimilate, or completely assimilate that information or experiences into our worldview. I noted that the stronger our attachment to, or the more identified we are with our worldview, the more likely we are to reject new information or experiences that may contradict or challenge our worldview's equilibrium. In conclusion, we all have a worldview. We developed it at a very young age and continue to develop it today. It affects how we react to ourselves, other people, and every situation in life. And my position is that we need to take responsibility for our personal worldview and not just continue to rely upon the one that we developed at a young age before we were able to consciously take responsibility for that. I'm not saying that your worldview needs a complete overhaul. Many of the aspects that you currently have in your worldview, you'll probably keep until the day you die. However, I am inviting you to examine your worldview and make sure that those foundational pillars upon which it stands are founded in truth, that they're strong, and that they're genuine, to who you are and who you want to be. In my experience, you'll become more confident and grounded, less defensive and insecure, and you'll bring a self-awareness and a wisdom to every experience that you face in life. Our goal here is to grow in understanding as human beings, and this is the first step. We have to know what we believe, why we believe it. We have to start where we're at. From this place of self-understanding, we can begin to examine other ways to view the world and make sure that the worldview that we have is one that we chose and is the best one for us. And we'll be doing just that in a deeper look. So join me for that video, and I invite you to subscribe if you want to stay up to date with my content. Hit like if you want to show your support. And always, thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in the next one.